Hello, on behalf of Booz Allen Hamilton, we'd like to welcome you to the Innovating the Working Moms live event today. We're so excited to be here and chatting with working moms. I'm Christine Wilson. I'm the founder and CEO of MtoM Consulting, which is a digital marketing agency that actually was founded to help businesses engage and communicate with moms. I am a mom of two boys, Ronan, who's 9, and Declan, who's 7. And today we have two very talented and accomplished women that are really thought leaders in their companies and in the ongoing working mom conversation. First, I'd like you to meet Booz Allen Hamilton Senior Executive and mom of 4, Dee Dee Helfenstein. Dee Dee, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I'd also like to welcome Julia Beck. She is also a mom of 4, which puts me to shame with my only 2, and founder of the It's Working Project, an organization committed to helping the private sector successfully bring new parents back to work with ease. Julia has over 20 years in the industry, so welcome, Julia. We're so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we know millions of women are juggling careers and motherhood, and they are really, dealing with all that comes with it. Today, we're going to talk to these two leaders to understand how they overcame some of those challenges and how they were able to be successful in their careers. And I have a couple of quick reminders for you before we start the conversation, okay? So first of all, today we're focused on innovating the working mom, but so many of the strategies and advice and the conversation we're going to have today applies to all parents and to caregivers. So we hope you'll all join in the conversation, and we'd love to continue it after this with other parents too. And we also know that there's a lot of ground to cover in this conversation, so we're just gonna scratch the surface today, and we will promise to continue this conversation. And to that end, we invite you to participate. We want you to be part of this. That's why we're live today. We want you to ask questions. We would love for you to submit tips, advice, maybe funny stories. We have the comments below. You can tweet to us. Please share. We will make sure we try to get to some of your questions, and we share some of your great stories with our audience. So I'm going to dive into the conversation. Sure. All right. So I'm going to start with you, Dee Dee.
Sure.
All right. You recently moderated a panel discussion at South by Southwest that was all about innovating the working mom. And so today is really an extension of that conversation. And can you tell us why you think that's such an important conversation to have?
Sure, thanks so much. I think it is an important conversation for 3 main reasons. The first is I myself was a mom, a working mom, and I experienced the joys as well as the frustrations of rejoining the workforce, of being pregnant and rejoining the workforce and some of the challenges there. And so I think the dialogue is important to really make sure that we are constantly vigilant about what working moms need as they're reentering the workforce. The second is, as a business leader, I know that working moms in the workforce are incredibly important. They bring an incredible diversity of thought and focus, and that is incredibly valuable. And I'm proud of the progress Booz Allen's made here, but I know that there's still more to do. And so being a part of this dialogue, both for our firm and for myself, is important. And I think the third is that when you're expecting a baby, it is a time of such joy and excitement, and you shouldn't be worried about how your employer is going to react to the news, or are you going to have to work to reprove yourself when you rejoin the workforce. And so I really think this dialogue is important so that we really value and celebrate with moms as they're expecting and dads who are expecting, but also then really support individuals as they're rejoining the workforce.
I agree with you completely, Dee Dee. That's fantastic. Julia, I know you're passionate about rethinking the working mom experience too, especially for moms who are just coming back after having a baby. And I wanted you to tell us a little bit about the It's Working project and what motivated you to create it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I agree with both of you in the sense that this is a critical conversation. I really am thrilled we're having it. The It's Working project was born after 20 years like yours in the space, really focused on parents from a lifestyle perspective. And as the years progressed, what I began to understand was how complex this journey was. And it didn't matter how great their stroller or breast pump was, the situation was complicated. And so as I began to delve deeper into it, I found that the stories were basically statistics, and those statistics were dry. The It's Working project has two primary goals. One, to gather stories in the first person narrative, because those are compelling stories. Those are truths as opposed to data points. Right. One. Two, it allows us then to go back to the employer and tell a story from a perspective that perhaps is not reflected in more traditional data. And so my passion is around the ability now to tell the story from a more authentic perspective.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So glad you've
Thank
done that.
you.
I think that both you, Julia, and Dee Dee have talked to many working mothers throughout your careers. And I'd love to pick your brains about the common challenges that you've found that they've talked to you about and advice that you have for succeeding at work. So I'm going to actually start with one of my favorite topics of conversation. I'm a little bit into socializing, so I love to chat, but networking. And, I think that when I first started my career, Dee Dee, a lot of people said to me, get out there and network. You're naturally a social person anyway, so you should be at these events. You should make sure you're always there and really advance your career that way. And after I had my children, those 7 a.m. breakfasts and those happy hours were much more difficult for me to get to. And I couldn't make it to all of them. So what do we do when we offer moms some tips about how to prioritize networking events and, how do they go to those things that might be before and after work hours?
Great. Thanks. That's a great question. And I think there's, for me, 3 main points. The first is around really networking with intention and really being thoughtful about the networking events that you do attend. And so one of my mentors early in my career offered some advice around creating a career plan, much like you would create a project plan for a work engagement, and really creating goals and objectives and then defining what are the skills and experiences and relationships you need to develop in order to really make those goals come true. And so part of that is then really thinking about the networking events that you want to attend and the relationships that you want to build and how they align to your goals and objectives and career plan. And then being really thoughtful and conscious about that. And when you go to those events, really sticking to it. So not just talking to your friends and your team members, but really going and building new relationships. I think the second part is to really develop the support network at home that allows you to do that. And so having, a support network, be it a spouse or a partner or parents in the area or even friends and community, as well as babysitters, et cetera. But developing that support network that allows you to attend those events that you do want to attend that are important to your career objectives. And then I think the last is really thinking outside of the box of different ways that you can network that aren't just happy hours and breakfasts, right?
Right.
So the meet and greets, the lunch meetings, the offering to help on a piece of work that allows you to work with new team members. And most importantly, picking up the phone versus emailing someone. So really to establish a personal relationship when you're asking for help or you're offering help to someone versus just emailing.
I always say the phone is so important, and I think that we didn't necessarily have reliable email when we started our careers or texting, so we're maybe a little more.
Had email.
Did we have? Yeah. So I think we're more prone to picking up the phone and calling, whereas others might not communicate that way. And I often encourage my team, pick up the phone and get to know those people a little bit better. Especially for us, a lot of times it's clients. You really can form a real relationship with the clients. So it's fantastic. So Julia, I'm a business owner, you're a business owner. Networking is key to our success, right?
It
so
is.
I think you have told me that you've come up with some creative ways to juggle motherhood and networking as a business owner. Can you share some of that?
Well, first and foremost, I want everybody to remember that motherhood is an experience that doesn't just happen to one person. It is something that we all experience. We've talked about finding other mothers, but the truth is that motherhood is a sisterhood, and by joining it, you're able then to connect and network. That is your common ground with those people. So be sure to engage yourself, whether it is with parents coming up into the workplace or parents who've already been there. So that already is there for you. It's already established. But yes, you're right. I do come up with some crazy events, primarily because I don't want to be on that schedule of breakfasts and happy hours. So I do a cheese suite every year in New York, which is stinky. It's awesome. It smells. It's incredible, though. And the turnout is wonderful. And we do it late in the afternoon, which really is a little bit more respectful to people's schedules. I also invite people to come to workout classes with me. SoulCycle has seen rows of my clients there with me because we all needed to work out anyway. So why not do it together? And so I seek to grow that common thread of motherhood and do activities that a little bit better timed and maybe a better use of our time.
Absolutely. My agency's actually going bowling tomorrow afternoon at 3 because I have to take the kids to swim practice, so I can't stay much later. So, that's our way of networking with each other and talking about what we're all working on. So, fantastic. I love that. All right. Well, I think this advice is fantastic. I'm already so excited about this conversation. I want to go in and talk a little bit about how you navigate the transition back to work right after you've had a child. So, I remember that was one of the most challenging times for me. I think we all have connected on that challenge. But Dee Dee, many working moms feel self-conscious when they return to work. They're unsure that if maybe their change in work schedule will reflect poorly, or if that there'll be a perception that they're less committed to their job. How can moms actually combat this?
It's a great question, and I think something we all struggled with. I think one thing is to really set some boundaries when you first come back to work. If you were a 24/7 worker before, setting boundaries is hard, but it's so critical to new moms. Be that you have to leave at a certain time to pick your child up from daycare, or every night you want to have dinner with your kids. And so making sure you set those boundaries and then really communicate them. So agree on what they need to be at home, and then really communicate them to your manager, to your coworkers, to your peers, to your clients even, making sure that everyone understands what those boundaries are, and that even though you might have to leave at 4:30 or 5, you'll be back online at 8 if you need to be. So I think that's one. The second is making sure you stick to them, because if you blow off those boundaries, then how do others really understand what they are? And so making sure that you're really kind of consistent and stick to them, and when you do kind of decide that you have to work late for a meeting or for a critical client engagement, that you are communicating that you're doing this because it's important, but those boundaries are still important too.
So important.
Yeah, I think the next is making sure you don't take on too much. So being thoughtful about what you do take on, and being conscious of how it fits into your priorities, and making sure what you take on you can do well, but don't take on too much in that process. And then I think the third around this is practicing a little self-forgiveness, that we all want to be super moms. We all want to be perfect at work and at home and as a wife, and it's just not. It's not realistic.
Not possible.
It's not possible.
All the time.
And so recognizing you're going to miss happy hours, you're going to miss some games, you're going to not always have a clean house, that those things are part of life, and that practice a little self-forgiveness, because that will ease that self-consciousness and make you kind of relax a little and be more comfortable in yourself.
I absolutely agree. My standards for a lot of things have adjusted to realistic standards, I think, that are much better for my quality of life. Lets me enjoy my work and my children much more. So Julia, we were talking earlier, and what Dee Dee was just saying reminds me a little bit about what we were talking about. We were actually discussing the idea of a parenting mentor, which I had never thought of before. Can you tell me a little bit about the idea behind a parenting mentor and how they can help ease the transition back to work for new parents?
Absolutely. So in the It's Working project, but also in my writing, I keep finding again and again that the secrets, sort of the intel that you need, doesn't live in HR. It lives in the minds of other parents. And so the idea of a parenting mentor means connecting with somebody who's been there, whether it be 3 weeks, 3 months, or even 3 years ahead of you, and being able to access from them the information you need. And then, most importantly, paying it forward. And we've talked about this. So taking that same information and turning to the woman who's behind you, the father who's behind you, and sharing that information as well. And it's not just about the intel, it's also about the support. Again, there's different types of support. There's the type that shows up in a manual that looks like support, and there's the type that really resonates through a culture. I know we were talking about somebody who I adore, who's a mother over at Discovery Communications, who actually has a ritual for welcoming mothers back into the workplace. And it has to do with showing up with a tension rod, shower curtain, so that they can pump milk in their office without being seen through the glass window. And so again, that's not something that HR came up with. That's peer-to-peer, mothers understanding where the need is.
Right. So it's really more of an informal construct.
It is, but some of the younger companies, I have to say, Birchbox is another example of a younger, smaller company who has a more formalized setup for mother and parenting mentoring.
That's fantastic. I think I took a couple of phone calls while I was pumping in a bathroom a few times. So
You shouldn't be pumping
really
in a
remember what that
bathroom.
was all about. Fantastic. Well, I really love the idea of a parenting mentor, and I think that's something I'm going to make sure I share with a lot of the women that work for me and the men that work for me, that I'm open to being their parenting mentor.
It's also very low cost. When we
Right.
talk about organizations trying to build a structure, a culture that really supports parents, there's no way that anybody could complain
Right.
that this would be cost prohibitive.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's sharing knowledge and,
Yeah.
and experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad we just got a lot of feedback that our audience really loved the idea of a parenting mentor. They're excited about it. So thank you so much. We're happy to get that feedback from you all. And thank you for sharing that idea, Julia. I think people will love that. And I think maybe when I go back to work, I'm going to make sure I make it actually something we really communicate, and it's not just an informal construct, but we actually set that up as something that people understand is available. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. All right, so I'm going to get into a couple of more things here. Dee Dee, you have actually been with Booz Allen for 18 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's fantastic. And I suspect that along the way, you've been given a lot of advice from other people that have kind of been down this road of being very successful and also, maybe being a parent and juggling all of that. So could you share a little bit of wisdom or an anecdote that maybe was shared with you along the way?
Sure. Thanks so much. One of the things that I do, and I have a lot of working moms who are kind of in my office talking about kind of reintegrating into the workforce. And one of the analogies I always use with them is what I call the glass ball analogy. It's, every day we are all juggling glass balls and plastic balls and rubber balls, and there's so many rubber balls, cleaning your house, and you're cleaning out your email, and going to the cleaners and all this stuff. And so we're constantly juggling those balls, but every day there needs to be a conscious, thoughtful decision around what are those glass balls that we're holding. And they could be a sick parent, a child's event, a client deliverable, or even a coworker in crisis. But what are those glass balls? Because if you drop a glass ball, it's going to shatter. But if you drop a plastic ball, it might dent a little, but you can pick it back up, and the rubber balls will just keep bouncing till you pick them up. So it's so important to every day with intent sit down and say, what are those glass balls in my life? What are those priorities that I really need to make sure I'm working my life around today, because those are so critically important. And it keeps me centered when I do that.
So I made a good choice when I left my suitcase unpacked on my floor this morning
Absolutely.
so that I could come to
rubber.
be here on time. That was a rubber ball, and I'm glad, even though my husband shamed me and he unpacked right away, I was like, oh, dear Lord, I can only do so much. But I felt a little guilty, but now I'm going to let that ball is just bouncing. I'll deal with it
You
later.
eventually have to empty it.
I do eventually I'll just wear all the clothes out of it, right?
There you go.
And then it'll be empty. So that's fantastic. I think that analogy is really good. And I think we all probably need to think a little bit more about what we are juggling and how important those things are. And sometimes it is the client deliverable, and sometimes it's just being there for your family. Right? Absolutely. That's wonderful. So Julia, Dee Dee shared how she and her colleagues are focused on reinventing the working mom experience overall.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you are seeing from other companies that you work with or have written about. Can you share maybe an example of a company that's really
Sure.
gone beyond the traditional perks and benefits and maybe doing something innovative to address sort of the needs of working moms?
Well, first of all, what's going on here is above and beyond. And what I like most about the Booz Allen approach right now is that it's realistic and it is pilot-based. So you're not jumping in saying, I've got you covered. You're stopping and you're listening, which is something we've been talking about, and you're really making, you're making progress culturally, as opposed to writing things down on a piece of paper. And so oftentimes we find that somebody comes back with some great research and says, here's what you have to do. You have to become a great place for women to work. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's not that simple. And again, we've talked about this also. It's a very transparent time. Women can go onto Fairy Godboss, they can go onto Glassdoor, and they can learn about what goes on within companies. So all of a sudden, companies find themselves, even if it's inauthentic, interested. What's going on here is authentic. So another example is over at Campbell's Soup.
Yes.
And they have daycare on site. It's run by Bright Horizons, but their contribution is really unique. They had paid a great deal of attention talking to their working parents, and they learned about this very hectic time of day called morning rush hour. Do you remember it?
Oh my gosh, I live it every day.
And the parents shared how taxing and sometimes traumatic it was to get all the way to work only to find out your child who was going to be in daycare all day was not going to be fed because you forgot the food. So Campbell's provides food within the daycare.
It's great.
That's awesome.
And so it's very little, again, low economic investment, high return. It's very little for Campbell's to do that, but my goodness, the pride they have around that step that they've taken, and then, of course, the positive buzz as a
Right.
result. So this is Campbell's taking, again, measured steps. They're not changing the whole organization in one fell swoop, but they are making amazing headway, and they're doing it through listening.
I love that. I mean, I think there's probably nothing worse than in the morning when it's who's going to make the breakfast, who's going to make the lunch, and
I thought you had that.
Yeah, we point at each other, and I'm trying to get the 9-year-old just to do it himself. I think it's time, right? 9,
Yeah.
you can start making your own lunch. Well, I think that's fantastic, and I like hearing about what people are doing and what businesses are doing. So, Dee Dee, I have, I want to just know, do you have any examples you'd like to add, or maybe some things that you are seeing that are sort of promising for innovating the working mom and the experience going forward?
I mean, I think as you said, there are a lot of companies looking at the traditional perks that are, part of having a baby and coming back to the workplace. But I think it's more than that, right? And so there's many companies right now that are looking at how do they create flexible work arrangements that really meet the mom at her lifestyle needs and where she is versus expecting her to come back and fit into the traditional 9-to-5 job. Matter of fact, one of our panelists at South by Southwest was the CEO of Mom Corp, whose their whole mission is working with companies to identify how do you make a job really flexible to meet a woman where she is or to meet a parent where they are, their lifestyle needs. I think the other is, looking at moms who are re-entering the workforce after they've raised their children. And so we actually just recently did a pilot with iRelaunch, which did internships for women who were looking to acquire skills as they were re-entering the workforce. And so that was great. iLaunch is a leading firm in the career re-entry area. So that's great. And then as Julia said, I think there's a lot of firms that are looking at mom coaches and parent coaches and expectancy coordinators and things that really facilitate a woman through not only the period while she's expecting a baby, but also as she re-enters the workforce. And I think that's critical. And I think all of these things are really going to be competitive advantages for firms in the future. Really creating a workforce where moms and parents really feel like they're valued and that their values and what's important to them, which are obviously their new children, is important to the company too. And that's really, I think, going to be a competitive advantage going forward.
I think that's great, and I want to touch back on something you both said. I thought, one, people may not know about Fairy Godboss and Glassdoor as places to go and look about this information. I think what you just mentioned, Dee Dee, is that people applying for jobs are going to be asking these questions, researching and understanding what are they getting themselves into, even if they aren't parents yet. What would be the expectation? So both of you, I think if you're watching, those would be great things for you to look into and also to think about as you're looking at career opportunities, even if you haven't had children yet, if you want to be a father or a mother in the future, I think that's fantastic. One other thing that I thought was really interesting is I've had a number of moms who were out of the workforce for 5, 10 years. They've come to my agency and said, I don't know how to do marketing with social media because it didn't exist when I left. I'd be happy to be an intern. I know that I'm going to be with one of your 20-year-old interns, but I want to learn because I don't know how to make myself really understand the space right now. And so giving them those opportunities, I think more companies need to see. You can have a great member of your workforce that needs to learn. So it's wonderful. Yeah. I love it. All right, so we've got some questions that are coming in from the audience. I want to give them a chance to ask a few questions. We won't be able to get to everyone's questions, but if we miss yours, please, we will make sure we save them and we answer them in a future event or on the Booz Allen website. So please get asking questions. You've got 2 amazing resources here that can give you insight and definitely help you with things that might be coming up. So. All right, Julia, I've got one for you that has come up on Facebook, and I think this is really great. And This one, can't wait to hear your answer because I didn't know what to do back when I was traveling. So Julia, this mom says, I'm a new mom and I'm planning to go on my first business trip next month. Do you have any tips?
I do.
Good.
I'm going to assume she's pumping.
Yes.
I don't know. So there's a lot to learn, and we've talked about this, that there are skills you have to acquire as a working mother, and sort of the tippy top of the mountain is how to pump and travel and ship and get through TSA with breast milk. It's not easy. It's complicated. So some tips. 1, call ahead to the hotel. Let them know that you are pumping milk. Request a refrigerator, and here's why. If you use the bar fridge, 2 bad things will happen. 1, it will not keep your milk at the correct temperature. And 2, you will get billed for the alcohol and the snacks that you moved to put your milk into the refrigerator. Get yourself your own refrigerator. They won't charge you. They can't because it's a medical use. Right. That I just learned, actually. Excuse me. 2, before you fly, especially if it's in the morning, make sure you pump because we produce more milk in the morning. Know where in the airport you're going to pump, and if it is not near your terminal, come up with a plan B, because many airports will say we have a place for mothers. BWI is a perfect example. They do. It's in Terminal D and E. It's on the connector. If you're AB, flying Southwest, for example,
how are you going to make it?
You're not going to make it. So make sure you know where you'll be pumping beforehand. Make sure you know also where you will pump when you get there, when you arrive there. You can call the conference that you're attending to find out what their facilities are. But most important, and I can't stress this enough, figure out how you are getting your milk home. At this point, you've worked awfully hard to produce it. It's your liquid gold, right? So either bring on Milk Ferry, and they're amazing, just absolutely amazing.
So Milk Ferry, it's a service?
It's a service.
Okay.
And the idea is that you want to have your milk shipped back to you.
Got it.
So that's all set up for you. Or you're going to have to learn the TSA guidelines. They're not very complex, and the most important thing you need to know is your ice packs need to be frozen, and you have to smile.
Yeah, if you're nice, it helps getting through TSA for sure.
Ice packs that are mushy make them crazy.
The slush.
Okay.
Well, okay, I'm going to tell you guys we got a lot of questions. So I'm going to start getting through these because they're just pouring in. All right. Well, no, it's fantastic. Dee Dee, I have a question for you. This one, she said, I'm a new mom and I feel like I'm getting some conflicting advice. Some people are telling me to ease back into it, and others are saying double down and never pass on any opportunity. Do you have some advice on how you handle that conflicting advice?
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think you're getting conflicting advice because it's a really personal decision. I mean, it's really a lot of it is based on what are your own career goals, what are your child's needs, what is your support network at home, what do you feel ready to take on? I certainly felt much more able to double down after my second child than my first child, where I was still actually learning how to take a shower sometimes, right? So I think it really depends. And so there is no right or wrong answer, and there is no perfect answer for you. It's really about sitting back and honestly thinking about what are my career goals and what do I need to worry about in my life. It's not only your children. Sometimes we're in the sandwich generation where you're taking care of children and parents at the same time. Or what your support network is. And so thinking about all of that is critically important, and making the decision that is right for you. I think that's one. The second is, if you do feel ready, though, to jump in, don't hesitate. I think there's this thing called the confidence gap that Sheryl Sandberg talks about in her Lean In book that is really focused on the fact that men feel that they can take on a new job where they only know about 60% of it, but women feel they need to know 100% to really take it on. And that they're less likely to ask for accommodations based on their lifestyle needs. And so they're less likely to say, if it's a traveling job, well, can I go every other week versus every week? Or can I work 7 to 4:30 versus 9 to 5:30, or can I, if it's a long commute, go 3 times a week versus 5 times a week? And so really put yourself out there and ask for what you want that really meets your lifestyle needs, and don't be afraid to take a risk if you feel that you're ready to do that.
So I have a couple of follow-up questions.
Sure.
I scrolled down and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit on some of them. I'll come back to some that came in earlier, but people are saying, how do you handle asking about a flex schedule when interviewing? And the second part to that question is, What do you do if your employer says no to the flexible schedule? Like, are there, other options for that? So, how do you go about asking initially, first of all? Yeah.
I think, and we've talked about, we've had the great pleasure of talking to each other a bit. Yeah. The sooner you're able to get into a dialogue with your employer about your pregnancy and your plans, the better the outcome will be, because you are both planning together, as opposed to you showing up at the end of a parental leave saying, here's what I've come up with. And it's not to say that your plan will stay exactly as it is, but engage your employer with you. It's an off-ramp and an on-ramp, and you have to be able to be involved in a symbiotic way with both. That's my advice.
Mm-hmm. Right, I can't agree more. It's very much about communicate, and really making sure that you are talking to your employer about what your lifestyle needs are now. That back to the kind of resetting your boundaries, what they are now, and can you create a flexible environment and be thoughtful about what that flexible work environment is that you're looking for. Is it 4 days a week? Is it less commuting, on a long commute? Is it leaving at a certain time because you need to pick your child up from daycare? But be thoughtful about what is it that you really need.
So go in with a plan when you ask, so you're not just saying, hey, will you give me an accommodation?
Right.
And the more specific you are, the less intimidating it will be to that person.
And if you also have a plan to say, hey, if I'm going to do this different hours, here's where I think it may have an impact, but here's where I know I can fix that or make up for it. So you're not just saying, I'm going to leave you hanging with whatever happens.
Right.
You have sort of a plan in place.
I would stay away from words like fixing,
yes,
though.
Right, because it's not a problem, right?
It's not a problem.
Right.
You are trying to revisit
your
approach to working. You haven't created a problem by having a child.
Yeah, but I think having a plan makes it much more, you're not putting it on your manager to come up with a plan.
So I think that's one. I think it's really important to go in with a plan and to, as you said, kind of think through some of the potential implications of that plan. I think the other is if, for example, that particular job can't accommodate your particular needs, asking, well, are there other jobs? Are there other jobs or other positions that I could potentially take that are accommodating? Because this isn't, again, this isn't a permanent thing. You might in 3 months or in 5 months or in 2 years decide that you want to change your boundaries again. And so really being thoughtful about, what kind of jobs are out there that can be accommodating if this one isn't.
Absolutely. All right, we just had another one come in, and it is in bold, so I'm going to jump to that one.
Okay.
But really, the viewer is asking, how hard is it to re-enter the workforce if you decide to take a break from working to raise your kids? I'm afraid to take the time off because I don't know if people will want me after the break. So we touched a little bit on this. What have you seen, and what are the opportunities for people that do take a break?
Well, that's I Relaunch.
Yeah, I would definitely reach out to I Relaunched. Their whole focus and mission is around helping individuals re-enter the career force, and so they are experts in this field. And so reaching out to them about what have they seen and what skills. There are definitely things that you can do while you're taking time off to be a parent that actually can keep your skills current. There are things that even you do for your children. I mean, I did many Excel spreadsheets for my child as a parent, as a room parent. So there are definitely things that you can do, and skills you can learn while you're taking some time off. So I would definitely reach out to the resources that are out there that can really help you think that through.
Yeah, and I took a little bit of time off after I had my second, and I actually was the president of a mom's organization on the board. I joined a nonprofit. So my resume didn't just go completely dead. It had really valuable experiences that maybe weren't necessarily paid.
True. And you'll gravitate towards projects that speak to your skill set. I was in charge of the speaker series at my kids' preschool. Well, obviously. Right. So there are certain things that you'll find that even if you do take the time off, you will stay engaged. There's also something very important, certainly with your organization, with mine, which is that the new parent experience is a very critical part of how we help people like Booz Allen and others to really make sense of how they're going to address their new parent needs. So don't underestimate the value of your contributing, whether it be writing, whether it be research.
Absolutely. And I also think that there's resources out there that have some really good information about this. I know Working Mother magazine has some great resources about on-ramping and off-ramping. So if you want to look that up online, I think that can give you some great tips to get in there. All right, I got another big bolded question,
All
so I'm going to
right.
jump to that one. What advice do you have for a parent who is in the process of looking for a job? How do you look more attractive as a candidate?
That's great. I mean, I think it is thinking about, so, I mean, what are the, again, the skills and the experiences that you bring to any job? I mean, every job is different, but really taking the time to look at the profile of the job and what are the skills and experiences that you really bring to that, which might be experiences that you've had from previous work, but they might be experiences that you've had from your time off where you were really, on the PTA or a room parent or building your network or skills. I think the other part is to, if there are particular skills that you're seeing that are needed to re-enter the workforce, go out and get them. There are lots of courses out there, courses you can even do online at nighttime after your children are in bed. So take the time to, if you're seeing some reoccurring patterns, to go out and get those skills.
And don't forget that becoming a mother, becoming a father as well, really opens an entire new version of yourself, your flexibility, your intuition, your empathy, your ability to juggle like crazy, all
Right.
those different glass and rubber and plastic balls. But those skills you shouldn't be, again, asking for
Yes.
forgiveness for being a parent.
proud
You
of them.
should be
Right.
proud and also able to articulate what it is that has improved about you since becoming a parent. I know that my creativity went through the roof when I had my first child.
I've also found that the sidelines of a soccer field can sometimes be the best ways to find job opportunities.
yes.
And you kind of almost interview on the side. I've also walked into conference rooms and sat down and said to someone, isn't your son on the swim team with my son? And it can actually be a fantastic way to connect with someone who's interviewing you. So I love that you really have to realize there's a lot of other parents out there.
Right.
Use that as your way to connect with them for sure. So we have a follow-up to one of our previous questions that says, how do you actually handle asking about the flex schedule when interviewing in a way that's not off-putting? So how do you not get them sort of worried about you if you're already asking about that while you're in the interview process?
Now, this is when you went back after the leave, or?
Well, so you're interviewing for a new job.
New job.
And you want to ask about a flex schedule, but you don't want them to write you off right away because you've asked about it. And we know that not all businesses are as, open-minded to things. So how do you ask and not sort of set them off yet?
Well, I think you just have to ask. I think it's, I think, first of all, it depends on if your flex schedule is absolutely critical or a want. And so really being honest with yourself about, what are your real requirements and what are your real wants. So wants
Right.
and requirements are different, right? And so being thoughtful about what those are and what are you really willing to flex depending on whether this is the job opportunity of a lifetime or not. And so you really need to have those conversations with yourself before you go into the job interview versus kind of on the spot, right? But I think you have to ask and you have to say, look, I've got a new baby at home. I'm looking for some flexibility. I was wondering if you have some flexible schedule options that we can talk about and kind of begin. But also most companies have that information on their websites.
Right.
So do your research ahead of time and go look at, it's not only on their websites, but also there's other websites like Fairy Godmother, et cetera, that have that information on there. So go do your research ahead of time to see if this is the company that offers that.
Absolutely.
Those policies.
It's a cultural thing,
Right.
right? And so you showing up with a clear plan, a priority, as you described, a plan, but also knowing the culture that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a culture that does not take pride in the way that they have parents on their workforce, don't apply for the job.
Right.
That's not
Right.
that's,
That's
not
not the
where
right
you're
fit.
supposed to be.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. All right, I have another one here from Facebook.
Okay.
She says, it might be a he, I'm not sure, said, I'd love some suggestions on how to incorporate some of these things if they aren't at your if your company doesn't already do them. So exampling parenting mentors or pushing for flexible schedules. So it sounds to me like this person is saying, how do I sort of get this
Be a
to
leader.
happen? How do I be a
Yeah,
leader?
that's a great
And how do I get
opportunity,
this to be implemented in my company? Do you have some ideas? Like you said before, maybe it's not HR that runs it, right? So,
Well,
so where do you
it's
start?
not HR. So there's a couple of things. Let's just call it what it is. The bottom line is going to define how far you're able to move this project. So let's start by examining ways in which you have first taken a bit of an audit of who's on that population, who is needing what now. If it's fathers, if it's mothers, if it's nursing women, figure out who needs what and come up with the least expensive, highest return plan that will be executed with ease as a matter of course, but the organization can have a sense of pride about and be that leader and own it and be really proud of it.
Right. There are so many programs that can be done that are not policy, that are not expensive. Just let's remember walking the guidelines of short-term disability when you were pregnant, super hard, right? And so just an expectancy coordinator is somebody who just really understands those guidelines and can sit down and explain them to the expecting moms. Mom coaches and parent coaches are really things that can be started at a grassroots level, just like mentoring circles.
Yes.
And so there are so many things that can really be done to create a culture that is welcoming, that doesn't require a lot of effort. And I think it's great that somebody wants to be a leader of that. That's great.
I encourage that person who has to be a leader.
That person should definitely show up and let us know how it goes, because I'd like to hear. This will actually stop people from leaving. This will increase your retention, your organization's retention. A really great place to start, by the way, is rooms to pump breast milk, because it's the law anyway.
Right.
So the law dictates 4 basic things. You can look it up. It's very straightforward. And it's a modestly priced investment, but if you add $500 onto that investment, you've created, this fantasy land of a mother suite, and just that alone makes people smile. You're smiling, right?
Absolutely.
So just think about sort of these low investment, high return ways, and also compliant. Compliance is good.
Absolutely. All right, we have to go review all of those rules because I want to make sure I'm complying.
Department of Labor
Yes.
website.
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, we actually have a fun anecdote that came in from Facebook, so I'm going to read it to everybody. So basically, it was about networking on the sports sidelines.
Yep.
This woman says, a mom from my son's football team started speaking with me about Booz Allen. How funny.
Oh.
She interviewed and was great and got hired. And now they enjoy meeting up and talking at work too.
That's awesome.
So what a fantastic way, she was able to get a new opportunity by the sidelines.
That's
That is
fabulous.
awesome. That's
I
great.
love that. I try to use that for developing sales opportunities too.
There you go.
It's always good if you're in sales. So we have one last question. Oh, I'm so sad we're getting to the end of the conversation, but it's a good question. And I'll ask you both to answer this if you can. How do you still make time for yourself between your job and your family? And let's be honest, just ourselves and who we are and what we want to do, on our own private time. How do you make the time? Yes, we're supposed to have time for ourselves.
I know. So I think it's back to the glass balls, right? And so, your own personal health is a glass ball itself. You can't be a great caregiver to your children. You can't be fully their spouse. You can't be fully there at work if you're not feeling well, if you're not healthy, if you're not in a good space. And so taking care of yourself both mentally and spiritually and physically is critically important, and that is a glass ball, and you should always think about that as a glass ball. Mm-hmm. And so we may not always be able to get to the gym, or we might always eat the right things, but looking at it holistically and saying, again, back to self-forgiveness if you don't, but looking at it holistically and really thinking about, what am I doing today that is for myself? It could be, working out, but it could also be just taking 30 minutes and reading a book, or taking some time away, putting that computer down and playing a board game with your child. But what is it that I'm doing today that really is promoting my mental, physical, and spiritual well-being?
I try to make sure that the time when I pick them up until they're sound asleep is sacred for the kid time. Right. So when somebody says, can I have a call during that window, or can you answer this email, I just say, I'm not available. I'm sorry. This is my time, and it may be a board game. It may be, that we're making dinner together, but I really hold that to be, important. And there's days where I will work from home so that I can pick them up right after school instead of aftercare, and get a little more time with them. And they love it. I show up and they'll say, "What are you doing here?" And, it's our special afternoon. So, I have to carve those times out, but I try to make sure I do it, and they feel so excited about it. So, Julia, your thoughts on this?
I think, I know what I do for myself, but it's the same thing. And something has to happen every day that just is mine, right? So I go to Soul Cycle a lot. We all know this. But it's an escape for me. There's music, there's exercise. But at the same time, I don't want my children to think sort of it's this linear sort of thing. So last night, my daughter went to a Giant and bought every flavor of Ben & Jerry's slices.
Awesome.
And we had a family taste test.
How fun.
They're good.
Yeah. What are Ben & Jerry's slices?
I shouldn't tell you.
Oh, don't tell me. Oh, I might do that tonight. Maybe I'll Facebook Live it.
Ben & Jerry's ice cream, but we cut them into quarters, and we all tasted them. And
awesome.
my vote was cookie dough. Of course it was.
Fantastic.
But my point is that I don't want them to think that the only thing I do for myself is riding on a bike that doesn't actually go anywhere. Yeah. So we do. They see me read. They see me work out. But we do things that are just very spontaneous. I also every kid gets one. Well, they're older now, but they used to get one mental health day a year, and they could call it when they wanted their mental health day. And when they called that day, everything got canceled, just like they were sick, except for we did something for their mental health.
That's fantastic. I love that idea.
That's a great idea.
I'm taking that one home,
You can have it. You can
Thank
have
you.
it.
My kids are going to try to bargain for one a month.
Yes.
They have to wait.
Mine too.
You start at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
You don't do it when there's 3 weeks left.
No, not now. No way. Well, I really appreciate you all sharing your tips, your thoughts. We'd like to continue this conversation, as we told you, and we hope we can convene again and have more conversations about it online, and sharing it live. So I would love to get any final words of wisdom. I know you've shared a lot, but we really, there's so much to talk about in this. Or any closing thoughts, or even a funny story would you like to share?
Sure, you want to start?
Sure. All right, so we all know that I'm very much focused on the new parent journey, and I think it's essential that everybody remembers that when a baby is born, so are parents. And when parents are born, they're at the bottom of a learning curve, and you not only have to be kind to yourself, and really understand that all of the super efficiencies that you had established before, they're gone, and you're starting from scratch. But the kindness that you offer yourself to the next mother behind you, the kindness that everything you put out there into the world that reflects this new version of who you are, that's essential. And so just remember, you're back at the bottom of a learning curve. You're different. You're not going to be the same again. And I would say applaud that and embrace it.
It's fantastic. I agree.
That's great.
What about you, Dee Dee?
So I have two last thoughts. The first is around really being present. My favorite Maya Angelou quote is, the people don't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so I think that's about really being present when you're with someone. So when you're with your kid, not having your computer open on your lap, when you are in a meeting with a coworker, not multitasking through it, when you're with a sick parent, really being present. I think people feel incredibly valued when you're really present with them, and that's really leaving them with how they're feeling. I think the second is around really paying it forward. That we have all had great leaders in our lives who have really helped us excel in our professions, but also helped us, re-enter the workforce and feel supported. And so it's incredibly important that regardless of what level you are in the organization, that you pay it forward, that when somebody is pregnant, that you celebrate that. That you help a new coworker, be it male or female, who's coming back from having a new baby and is learning to readjust their lives. And so paying it forward is critical, and it will help the organization immensely.
And maybe giving them a break when they haven't slept the night before and they're trying to come up with the word to say something, right?
I just want to correct one thing I said.
Sure.
It's milk stork, not milk fairy.
Oh, milk stork. Okay, fantastic.
So if you're Googling it and you're saying this isn't working, you're right.
Milk stork. I love it. I'm glad you thought of it, and I wish that I had known about it.
Well,
it sounds
didn't
fantastic.
exist, neither did the internet. So.
Gosh, I feel like we just missed out, but there's so many
we're
great
here
resources.
now.
We're here now. So one thing, I just want to add is that I think we're all very lucky to be moms, and that our children are one of the most important things in our lives. We're so lucky. We also have wonderful careers, which makes me very satisfied. Both things together have made my life so complete, as I know it has for you all. So we are so happy for all of you parents out there and for the joy that your children give you. And we hope that getting this conversation started feels like we're reaching out to support you as moms, and that you can reach back out for additional guidance, and we'll make sure we follow up and answer you on Facebook or wherever it might be. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who came in with us live today. We really appreciate it. Please make sure that you check out the notes at the bottom, and you can go to boozallen.com/women to learn more about what Booz Allen is doing to support working women and parents. And also visit the itsworkingproject.com to connect with Julia and to learn more about her research and work. And until next time, we hope you have a fantastic afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you very much.